Welcome to the Sutherland Report. Thank you very much for joining me for yet another episode, and with two incredible guests that I will have on here. Now, here's the key thing. This program will be undercover, and when you hear what the program's about, you will then understand why. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a picture up of the Georgia Guidestones. And then I'm going to bring on my two guests. And then we're going to have a discussion about some research that they recently did at a conference in the US. So thank you for bearing with me. I will put the picture up. I will move to camera right, and then we will get going. So the joy. So I'm just going to bring my friends on. I do apologize if it's a little bit uncomfortable where I'm also hidden, but we'll work this out. Right. So here we go. Guys, thank you so much for joining me, Kat, and joining me, Robbie. It's very much appreciated. And I am going to be at this part of the screen. Now, names are changed because people are undercover. So recently, they went to a conference. One of the things that we always find is that there are a lot of Christians that criticize us for some of the places we end up. But there is a reason, because we need to do the research and find out what's going on. If people disagree with that, I respect that, but that's your opinion, and we are also entitled to ours. So, Kat, I'm going to turn to you first. Lovely to see you.
It's great to meet you.
Thank you very much. Could you please explain to me, to viewers, listeners, where you've been and what it was all about?
So we were just at Pagan and that takes place during March, was the 15th through the 17th, right. And in Plymouth, Minnesota. And it's this huge gathering of pagans and witches, right. That come together, and they have seminars, rituals take place, and also there's a ball, and it's just like a big conference.
Right. Kat, had you been there before?
I have not been to Paganicon before. This was my first time.
Right. Okay. I'm just going to turn to Robbie. Lovely to see you as well, and thank you so much for joining me tonight. It's much appreciated. Robbie, was it the first time you had attended? I'm going to call it Pagan I Con. I think that quite suits, really. But Robbie, was that the first time you had attended?
Yes, it was, Mark. My very first time, and I had actually tried for 3 years before to get to this event, but it was always one thing after another. So finally, this year, it all worked out.
Right. How many years has this particular event been running?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know. It's been several years. I've had friends who have gone in the past, but off the top of my head, I don't know.
And what we'll do, we're not going to mention various friends, but the key thing that I want to nail down is one of the privileges of and asking you to come on, because it was your first time. And as you know, when we have first time experiences, when we haven't been to something before, we see it through very different eyes to other people that have been there, a number of times before. So, Kat, starting with you. What were your first impressions?
Well, for me, it was interesting because a lot of the people I saw, I had, like when I was in high school, I befriended a lot of the Gothic, and emo community. And so that's what I saw throughout here. And a lot of the same people who played Dungeons and Dragons, things like just that kind of type of person. And so for me, I was like, okay, I can have conversations with these people. There was also a range of ex-hippies as well, that I was able, that I saw throughout.
Right. If Robbie, coming to you, because I want to come back to this whole discussion about emo, goth, and Dungeons and Dragons, because particularly with Dungeons and Dragons, this I think is very, very important. Robbie, what were your first impressions?
How incredibly sad this gathering of pagans was. When I looked at the people, and this didn't take long, Mark, to pick up on this, but just seeing people who are lost, hurting, they're wounded and traumatized by things that have happened to them in their lives. These are people who are social outcasts. They are, people would call them weird, the way they acted, the way they dressed. These are people who what we would used to call at one point, they lived on the fringes of society. But I have to say, Mark, again, it's that overwhelming sadness and trauma from the people that I really saw.
And it's what is within them. So what, I mean, I'm throwing this out because I'd like either of you answer this. Because Robbie, you're throwing out something very interesting. So your observation is of trauma, of sadness. So when we're observing that, we're picking, sorry to sound, it sounds a bit stupid, but we're picking it up from them. It's what is within them. Is that a fair comment?
Yes, it is. And as Kat had mentioned, throughout the entire weekend, there were breakout sessions where you would have speakers speak. So you could choose who you wanted to go to listen to. So you would end up in a room of, let's say, 20 to 30 women, maybe some men, but mostly women. And during these breakout sessions is when you could really see what was inside these women as they're talking and sharing, vaguely sharing just trauma and woundedness in their lives. So in these breakout sessions is where you really saw that.
Could you, I mean, without going into certain details, obviously, but then again, we're not going to name people, but what kind of things were people talking about then in these sessions?
Well, I think one that our first one we went to was session was it was a ritual actually. And basically it was what was it? You would go, what was going on was you would go down, or you would kind of, the ritual was to go down a yew tree down to the roots, and you meet this lady named Sylvia Platt. And so Bobby and I, us being Christians, we're not going to do that. So we watched everybody else do that. And so when they were done with the guided meditation, because that's kind of what it was. It really was a guided meditation. When the crowd was done, they talked about the experiences that they had throughout it, and a lot of them was the emotional, like basically Sylvia saying it's going to be okay. One of the gals said she laid her head on her lap and said it's going to be okay. You've gone through a lot. Another person was like, I am you and you are me, finish out what I was intended to do. So there were some other sessions that were kind of like, it felt like it was a therapy session in the sense, like everything's going to be okay.
Right. But it felt like a therapy session, but from our worldview, I don't want to put words in your mouth, without really the real answer to that therapy session.
Correct. Because what they're doing, instead of turning to the Bible, to that biblical worldview, they're turning to, and this may sound so ridiculous, but they're turning to these ancient pagan gods and goddesses for that guidance, for healing, etc., all the things that they're looking for. But it truly is these false gods and goddesses from the ancient world that they are following.
So, Kat, so you were describing these people that they've been, emos, goths, that, which is a culture that, as you very kindly said already, that you know a lot about. But can we put, excuse the pun, Dungeons and Dragons on the table here? And can we discuss that?
Yeah.
Because spiritually, as far as I'm concerned, as far as we're concerned, it's a no-no. But it's this whole, what does Dungeons and Dragons then incorporate? Is it this whole thing of role play, the fact that people can forget themselves and lead a different life, which is very interesting with how things have changed digitally now. What are your thoughts?
And that's basically it. I've known plenty of people who have played Dungeons and Dragons. I will even admit there's Christians even out there that do play this game. And to be honest, I befriended a couple, some engineers that were Christians when I used a long time ago. And I got thrown in to play a couple times. I hated the game. I will never play the game again. But basically you are thrown into, it is a role play event where you are a strong character, and it can be, you're either one full of magic that has healing abilities, things like that, or a warrior. And you go on these quests and help save and conquer quests. And it's definitely more of a self-esteem building game.
Right.
In fantasy.
Right. Was Harry Potter on display at this conference?
Well, there was Harry Potter wands that were on display at this conference.
Right.
I did run into one of the seminars that I did go to. The speaker had he looked like he walked out of Harry Potter, basically. He had a wizard's hat on, the cloak, and then he was waving a wand during a session. So while everybody was in a breakout session, it was very interesting.
Right. Well, there is a reason for asking that, because it's where our culture is at, and I'm saying that particularly over here. And then it'd be very interesting to discuss how that has impacted America. Robbie, so you're talking about the people are extremely sad. Kat's talked about the fact that this is a therapy session. Now, how many people do you think over the 2 days? Is it 2 or 3 days, the conference?
3 days.
3 days. How many people do you think were attending this event?
The number that I heard was about 1,000 attendees, which was comparable to last year.
Right. And are the seminars, do they go online? Do they go on their website? Not that I'm going to give away where the website is, but people can easily find them. Not encouraging that.
Yeah, I have not seen that, Mark. I haven't seen any of their past seminars or conferences online.
I was able to obtain a couple, from one of the sessions, I was able to obtain slides that was in a breakout session, but that's it. Right.
Well, to me, by you going, and this is evangelism. This is finding out what's going on. Asking the $1 million question. Why are churches in America not turning up by the busload to go in and see what's going on and say, we can pray for you, we know the answer, which is Jesus? What I'm not being rude, and I would say that those kind of events that would happen over here, I'd be asking the same question. Why aren't people doing that? Why is the church in America, they're not taking this seriously? Or do you think that's an unfair question?
Well, first, I would say that Christians are unaware of this event. When I became a Christian, I did not know about this kind of event at all until I joined the ministry that I'm a part of. And that's how I knew. So now I'm telling my friends who are Christians about this, and they're just learning about this. So that would be the first thing, Mark, is Christians don't even know about this type of event.
Right. When you're explaining that to your friends, are they, I know I'm asking some leading questions deliberately, and you know that, but are they horrified that you attend there, or are they genuinely respectful? Do they understand that you're going there to find out what's going on and it's research to pass back to fellow believers?
They're just shocked. They're like, what? What do you mean pagans have an annual conference? That's the weirdest thing that they've heard. And so once I tell them about the conference, they're like, okay. So they're very, at least my friends have been very supportive of me going to this event. And Mark, my approach is first and foremost is to do witnessing to the pagans. Then secondly is to then report back to my base of what I saw, what I heard, the conversations that I had. So, but no, overall, people have been supportive. Now, there are other events similar to Paganicon in the pagan realm that people have been more dismissive of and critical of me going to, but for this event, very supportive.
What are those, excuse me, I try not to sneeze. What are those events that people have been criticized, that have been critical of you attending, Robbie? Are you allowed to say?
Oh, Burning Man. So I have tried for years to get to Burning Man. I still haven't been able to. I'm hoping this year will be the first time that I can. So when I have been talking to my support base, that's where people have been more critical because they know a little bit about Burning Man. Paganicon is a small regional event. Obviously, Burning Man is a more global event with a high visibility. So more people know about that. And that's where criticism has come my way of my desire to go to do witnessing and research.
Sorry, I'm going on about this, but I'm going on about this because, as you know, in our discussions, this is quite passionate to me because I think it's fantastic that you do go and you go, you know, under God's protection, right? It's not something that you abuse, and you're not flippant about that, and nor is the rest of the team, not at all. You go. Why are they more critical of Burning Man than of Pagan I Con, as I'll call it? Because I don't see the difference between the two, and that's because of my knowledge. What, Robbie, again, what are your thoughts?
Probably because of they know that there is a lot of sexual perversion, immorality that takes place.
Yeah.
People know that there's probably going to be a lot of nudity, a lot of drinking, drugs, psychedelics, every vice under the sun that you can think of. They know that these activities take place at Burning Man. So then I have then had to go to them and explain, yes, that does take place. However, you can avoid it. If you don't want to partake, you can avoid it. So so that would be the main thing, Mark, is that because they know of all the debauchery that takes place. So they feel that as Christians, we should not be a part of that at all, which I agree. I'm not going to be part of that when I go to Burning Man.
No, and I totally agree with you. And you can, as we know by talking to other friends of ours, you can avoid that. You can step out of that. But what is fascinating is that Burning Man is when we've got, people may not know this, you know this, of course, that you've got various mayors. You've had mayors from certain American cities going there. When you have got CIA links, FBI links, when you've got the head of top social media, IT, Google, etc., going there, then you have to ask yourself a very serious question of why are they going there? So why are they I'll ask that question. I know we're suddenly pivoting to Burning Man, but why are these people going there? Is it because they see this as some utopian dream to pursue? What are your comments?
I would say that they go there to, one, see where the culture is going, to get a good
Right.
pulse of the top, the exciting thought leaders who are leading our culture, and then two, to actually become one of those leaders shaping our culture. So I think it's a twofold, plus various other reasons too, but those are the top two reasons I believe a lot of these people will go to this event.
What Pagan I Con, flipping back, going straight back to this, was the whole discussion of transgender, transhumanism on display? Was that incorporated in the seminars?
Huge. It was incorporated actually from the beginning.
Wow.
They had little name banners that stated you could with the pronouns that you could use, and you could write your own pronoun in as well. And so that was from the get-go. There was seminars as well that took place around the transgender LGBTQ plus community. Yeah.
Wow.
And you saw it too. You saw that.
Sorry, Robbie. Go on.
No, I'm sorry. You saw people who were transgender at the conference. Several.
Mm-hmm.
Could you give any percentage? Do you think? Were you talking about 1% of people attending, or what do you think?
I don't know. I would say maybe 5 to 10%. Kat, what do you think?
I would say that mostly. The only thing I did notice was, and Robbie and I had a discussion about it, how the she and the her pronouns were gone right away, and the written in ones as well. So I would say, I would say 10% at the least. It was pretty in the high range. Other than that, yeah, I would say 10%.
Going back, when you were saying about the she and the her pronouns have gone, could you just follow that thought and say what pronouns are being then used?
The pronouns that were being used were the she and the hers, definitely, but then also the theys. They, them. It seemed like there wasn't a lot of like the he or him that were being used at all.
Wow. So this whole thing of there are 600 sexes and all this kind of thing, and it's not male and female. So totally all of that on display. Is that a fair comment then? Yeah,
I would say so. Yeah.
Wow. Right. So there you are on the first day, Bobby. There you are. You've been observing these people that there's just lots of sadness around. How did that make you feel? How did that make you feel?
It reminded me of Jesus when he's doing the Sermon on the Mount. And then when he's talking about the Beatitudes, where those who mourn, and what he's talking about is not mourning for people who have passed away or who are sick or dying. He's talking about a burden that as Christians we have for those who are lost. They're lost. They're on the road to perdition. They are in rebellion against the Lord. So very much that mourning and feeling that burden for these hundreds of pagans, witches, druids, Satanists, all there, and thinking they're on the road to hell. These people, if they continue to rebel against the Lord, are going to hell. So it's very much feeling that burden and wanting to talk to everybody, wanting to witness to everyone.
Mhm.
I hear you. I mean, Pagan I Con, if you're saying there's 1,000 people going there, is there other events like that? Not Burning Man, which is different, but of course there's strong correlations. Are there other events happening in America along the Pagan I Con on lines, or is that the biggest and number one?
You know, from what I have seen, that is probably one of the biggest ones. And because that area of the country is, for some reason, I don't understand, but that area of the country has become like the headquarters or the central area for paganism in this country. So there's something about that area. And this is where pagans all come together every year to have this conference. So there might be smaller events throughout the country, but probably not as widely attended as this one.
Right. So we remember. Do you remember when President Trump was president and they were all having, all these ladies with pink hats, or I think some of them were ladies, he says sarcastically, but also the fact they're saying all these witches were praying against him. The reason why I say that is, do you think a number of Christians in America are actually aware of this pagan, as we've said earlier? They're not aware of this pagan culture at all. And I felt that when that moment happened in American culture, it began to wake a few people up, because they just thought, who are these lunatics? And you're telling me we've got witches, etc., etc. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, in talking to my friends, as the event was, I was preparing for the event, and a lot of discussions were happening, because I'm asking people, please pray for me while I'm there. Pray for me before I get there. Pray for the team. Not being surprised to hear me say that America is a pagan culture. We do not live in a Christian culture. We live in a pagan culture. So a lot of surprised reactions from my friends when I would share that. And even, Mark, what was interesting is even referring to the word. It's like you see paganism in the Word of God, in the Old Testament, in the New Testament. This is something that the Israelites were always, dealing with and falling into. And then in the New Testament, so even making my friends aware of the fact that in the Bible, that's what they're talking about. That's what the authors are speaking of, is this paganism, this idolatry.
Yeah. And I agree, because like a lot of people that I've talked to, coworkers especially, because they asked where I was. I said I was going to a convention, and they're like, "Oh, what convention?" And they had no clue that stuff like this occurred at all. And when you look there, it happens all, like when you really look into it, events like this happen. Not as big as Pagan Con, but like Robbie said, there's little ones that happen throughout each state. There could be psychic fairs, like I know where I live, there's going to be, I think in August, they'll do a huge pagan fest as well. So it's there, but the Christians mostly, they stay away, which is sad. It really is.
Yeah. Because if we track that, it'd be very interesting. If there's 52 weeks a year, 52 weekends, it'd be interesting to see if there is an event like that virtually every single weekend. Maybe not at Christmas. Maybe they'll have a day off. I don't know. But the thing is, we can. That would be really, really interesting to actually correlate. Bobby, that statement to say that, America is a pagan country, that's quite shocking. How does that go against the fact that I think you, and having been to America many times and observed it, that you seem to have more churches on the street corner than, you know, than scones. I mean, than than any other country, so to speak. So, what do you say to that comment in regard to the amount of churches? Then it's becoming this pagan country. Could you give me some more examples of the paganism that is overtaking America?
Well, it's like what Kat has already mentioned, the psychic fairs. So let's say 30, 40 years ago, these psychic fairs were small events. Your goth people were there, the fringes of society, strange people. That's who went
Right.
to these events. You now go to a psychic fair in any city in America, and you will see mainstream America there. You will see women who look like they just came out of a Talbot's catalog will be there. You see teenagers, you see young men who are total jocks. You see them and you can tell that they're high school athletes. They're there. You see little children. They're there. Everyone is now at these psychic fairs pursuing and looking for something.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Where are we failing as the church in all this? Where are we failing?
We don't want to reach out. That's the thing. We're uncomfortable. And what I have seen in the past is that we want to stay within our comfort zone. Somebody that I talked to, and this was a long time ago, said that, if you kind of like along the lines of, if you want to talk about God and going out and doing that, that's great. But we don't want to, as America too, we don't want to have these conversations. We want to respect everybody and we don't want to offend anybody as well. And the truth is offensive and it can ruffle feathers. But I was talking with one of my pastor actually, and he said, if you see somebody who's in a building on a top level and the flames are underneath and it's coming up and it's going to burn down, would you go run and help them, or would you walk past them?
Yeah.
And most of us would probably stop and go and help. So where I'm getting with that is, why aren't we don't want to, as society, we don't want to go and help sometimes. We don't want to offend. We don't want to state the truth because we could lose that friend. We could lose that significant other. We could just lose a relationship.
Right.
And we shouldn't be afraid to do that.
Right. Which is why you both attended, why a team attended. I want to give you, you've heard this, but I want to put this anecdote on the record because I think it's another illustration. When I attended the Parliament of World Religions in Chicago last summer, I was at a seminar. So whoever gives us the privilege of listening to this, just to pay attention of why we need to attend Pagan I Con, why we need to go to Burning Man, why we need to attend the Parliament of World Religions, is because I'm sitting there in a seminar, and the seminar was about defunding bodies in regard to oil, right? Defund from oil, get your shares out of oil and all this other stupidity in my mind. And I was in the seminar, and Corinne Gore, Al Gore's daughter, was on the board. And to be honest, it was one of the only reasons I decided to attend there, because then I thought I could speak from authority. I was with another friend of ours who shall be named nameless, and at the same halfway through the seminar, this lady came in on my left and came up to the panel to talk to them and to talk to the gentleman who was chairing the seminar. And my friend, our mutual friend, turned around and said, that woman name is da 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 da, and she is one of the most powerful witches in North America. And I looked at them and went, excuse me? So that was an illustration of NGOs, non-government organizations, meeting climate change radicals, because they all are, meeting the occult, meeting, they are, I just think, totally deluded, but they are there to then push forward their utopian agenda. So with that in one context, and with your experience of late, where does Ephesians 6 fit into this? And how do we, because then the church within America, in the UK, doesn't seem to understand this. Where does Ephesians 6? We're not fighting flesh and blood, but principalities and powers. What are your thoughts on that, guys? What are your thoughts on that? Where does it fit into that? Do churches in America actually understand that there's a spiritual battle going on?
I would say with the people in my Christian circles, yes. An understanding of the spiritual realm, that's where the fight really takes place. So I do have to say, my friends really supported me through prayer in this event and others that I go that are similar to this. They are my prayer warriors. They are the people who support me in prayer before, during, and afterwards. And they're praying for the people I talk to, that I witness to. So I would say, Mark, that with my friends, they understand this is the battle in the spiritual realm.
Right. They understand that. Your friends
Yes.
understand that.
Yes.
Right.
Now, again, my circle is small compared to all of the, you look at the church nationwide. But my experience has been that my friends really understand that spiritual realm.
Right. Is your pastor supportive of what you do?
Absolutely. Yes.
Right.
The pastor in my previous church, yes, to a certain extent. But my current pastor, very much so. And I have several pastors on my distribution list where I'm informing people of what I'm doing, and very supportive too, and understanding the importance of what I'm doing.
Do they give you an opportunity to speak about that, to other than the information that you put out, but do they actually give you an opportunity to talk about that?
No, I haven't had that opportunity until yesterday. One of the pastors on my distribution list, he has now invited me to have dinner with him and his wife so that we can talk about how I can now go to his church and get his congregation involved as prayer support for my work. But he's the first one. But then, Mark, on the other hand, too, I haven't been as forthcoming or assertive in asking my pastor friends if I can have that audience with their congregation. So some of that is on me, too.
If you were more assertive over that, do you think that would be received positively?
I don't know. And I say that because typically when this has come up, like, hey, can I do this with your church? Or can I do that? It's like, well, no, because if we let you do it, then we've got to let everybody else do this too, because these pastors are always bombarded by people within their congregation and outside of their congregation saying, hey, can I do a fundraiser for this event? Or can I do the, so they're always being bombarded. So they are at an arm's length, because then it's like, well, Rita, if we let you do this, we've got to let everybody else do it too.
I hear you. So there's an understandable doorkeeping behavior going on, gatekeeping in that way.
Yes.
Right. Kat, in your situation, and I'll start with you on this. What was one or two positive things that came out of it? Were there some encouraging conversations that you had with people that were actually attending? Could you pin any of that down?
Oh my gosh. I actually ended up having 3 conversations with people, but I think the biggest takeaway that I have is it was our last day, and I thought I wasn't going to have a conversation with anybody. I tried and failed multiple. It was just, it wasn't happening. And so I was just like, okay, I got it. It's all right if I don't. One of our mutual friends and I walked out of a seminar, and I was stopped by this kid and who wanted to have a conversation with me. And they were, had gone, we just started talking, and they ended up telling me they went to seminary school.
Right.
They know all of this, all the Christian facts. They know it all. And this was definitely not me. This was God just using me as a vessel. And I looked at them and I said, you know all this, then so why haven't you taken the step of faith? And they did give a reason, which I'm not going to say on here, but to protect them. But it was one of the best conversations I have had. I've also, at my work too, I've had conversations with mostly a good amount of 2 of my coworkers in depth about kind of what has occurred. And they are in full support of what I do. So it was really, it's been very fruitful. And then actually through this, I found out that one is a Christian, which I would have never known had I not told them that I had gone and was at Paganicon and talking to people and stuff. And they just said, well, I'm glad that we need to be having these conversations, and they need to have seeds planted within them. So it's been just the feedback from it has been amazing, especially at my work.
Well, it's good that at work you managed to encourage someone to take their light from under a bushel and actually put it out there in the workplace. I think, it's that's really, really good. And also the fact is, if you had not attended Pagan I Con, then you couldn't have those conversations with those people at all. So if you sown seeds, you poured water on seeds there that have been buried in the past. So we'll see what happens in regard to that germination. Bobby, I think you touched on this, but can you give other positive experiences of going there? Any specific conversations?
Well, every conversation that I had was positive in that, and this is something that I learned from the director of the ministry that I'm part of, is every conversation counts. So you're having a conversation with a pagan and they're bringing up all these points and you just can't refute them, but you say what you can say. You walk away thinking, boy, that was a huge failure. I didn't rebut them. I should have said, and you're just frustrated. It's like, no. Every conversation counts. And then secondly, you never discount the work of the Holy Spirit. So it's what Kat said earlier. It's not us. It is the Holy Spirit ministering through us to the people we're talking to. So in that regard, all of the conversations were positive, but I can say a couple of conversations that stand out is one was at a seminar, probably about 30 people in attendance. And the speaker mentioned something that was just so ridiculous about the Trinity. So she was positing that Christians came up with the doctrine of the Trinity from Plato's creation myth. And when she was saying this, I'm like, what? It was so ridiculous. I'm like, I cannot let that go. She cannot, get away with saying something that is so ridiculously wrong.
Absolutely.
yeah, so after she spoke, she did Q&A. I was the first one to stand up, and I was able to say to the entire group, they all got to hear me, and to correct her on the Trinity, and to explain the Trinity did not come from Plato. It came from the book of Genesis, where the Trinity is in the act of creation. So that was a lot of fun. There was another conversation on the second day with this gentleman, chip on his shoulder, angry guy, just a malcontent.
Mm.
And we're talking, and it's a tough conversation. Everything that I would bring up, he would refute it and fight me. And I'm doing the same thing to him. He's saying things that, pro-paganism, and I'm trying to defend the faith. And finally, this was actually ridiculous, because he said that he could prove that God is not loving and does not love. I'm like, okay, well, how are you going to do that? And he goes, do you have children? Well, we have grandchildren in my family. He goes, okay, do you love the grandchildren? I'm like, yes. He goes, would you throw them in an oven? And I'm like, no.
Wow.
So what he was doing, Mark, was equating throwing your child in an oven to God throwing someone to hell. So we went through that conversation, but at the end, I was able to share the gospel, the message of salvation with him, and he listened. His wife listened, and it was amazing to see the Holy Spirit minister to both of them in that conversation.
Wow, and praise God for that, because the other thing is, if you weren't in that situation, if you weren't there, then you couldn't have that conversation with that particular individual. And I think going back to beginning and early part of our conversation was the fact, as Kat was alluding to, where it's like, no, we don't want to go to the difficult places, do we? We don't want to have these difficult conversations. We don't want to do that. What is, Kat, coming back to Dungeons and Dragons and this whole thing of role play, we look at how that then has accelerated into the culture of what's called Second Life, and this whole thing of digitally, where in the digital world you have another persona and you live your life through that. I mean, again, we've got a mutual friend who's an expert on that, but the church doesn't know much about these things. It won't discuss it. I mean, to be honest, the fact that we've got a problem where they won't discuss politics or the spiritual battle that's going on, and when I have criticism, people say, "Oh, you're going on about politics." I'm turning around saying, "Well, that is the spiritual battle manifesting." You've talked about, we're having a discussion about the culture war of paganism, right? That is going on, Wicca and all that. This is a culture war. You've said, we've talked about the fact that the church, etc., many people are not aware of this, right? I'm going to leave. We're going to end in a couple of minutes, but I'm going to leave you to work out how you want to explain this or the details of it. But what can people do to support you and to pay an interest in this ministry? What could people do? Bobby, I'll start with you first.
Okay, well, I am a full-time missionary. I chose to leave my full-time job in the mortgage industry, and join the ministry full-time. So that means that I have to raise all my own financial support so that I can have the money to not work a traditional job, to be focused on this type of ministry work full-time. So for myself, what I do is to raise support. I always write up updates and newsletters going into detail of my conversations that I've had and things that have happened at these types of events. So once people get on my distribution list, once they start reading of the work that I do through this ministry, that's when people are then led to support me through prayer, and then support me through financial donations. So that's how it works for myself.
And what I will say, and when I'm going to say this, ask Kat the same question. What I will say is, if people want to do that, then you can reach out to me, and then I can reach out to to Bobby, and I can reach out to Kat. So my email, marksutherland26@gmail.com, is where you will find me, and then I can facilitate that. Kat, what about for yourself as well?
Well, that for myself, it's different because I work full time. I'm also right now in school getting my master's. And so I will take my vacation time and go. I just started within this evangelistic ministry. And so for me, I've saved up money from my vacation funds and stuff, and that's what I do. Is right now I have no support. I have no supporters, and so I've been using my own funds and my own vacation time to go and do this. But I have recently started a blog. So I'm putting things, so like our time at the Parliament, I'm putting seminars and talks that we've gone to, or I have gone to on there, and conversations that I am having at these psychic fairs and with people, and what the arguments are that they're saying. For example, I had a conversation with this gentleman a couple weeks ago, and he believed that all paths, it doesn't matter, your path, your path may be different than mine, but we'll all end up in the same place. And we also talked about good energy versus bad energy, and how do you know if it's good or bad? And so on my blog, I go into what is being said, and I research a lot in my spare time.
No. How many weeks holiday do you get a year?
2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah. And school's right now, this was my vacation. School's right now taking a lot of my vacation time. So on the weekends, I'm going to psychic fairs and I'm having conversations with people.
Wow. So I think the obvious thing is that to say to people, please, who are very kindly listening to this, and it is audio for a reason, because it's protecting Kat and protecting Bobby and protecting the work that they do, because it is undercover, and also at various times it's not understood by some people. But praise God that you have got people around you that understand what is going on, because you are immersed in the cultural changing that people are trying to push on a negative side, but also reminding the church what we need to be doing, and we need to be involved in all aspects of life and reaching people as best we can. So thank you for that. So I would say to people, please pray for Kat, pray for Bobby, pray for their other team members, and where they go and what they end up, what they, the places that we go, and that the blogs that they write, the books that they write, and the information that they write, and get that out there. Right, we're in the last sort of 2 minutes really, but is there anything? Well, first of all, just thank you for joining me and thank you for your time. Is there anything else that you would like to say before we go?
Well, there's one thing I would like to share. The last conversation that I had at Pagan was with this young woman, and she explains to me that for this conference, that pagans need a safe place to go to. They need to be among other pagans. They need to be with their community. They need to just have a place where no one is bothering them. Nobody is challenging what they're saying. They just need to be safe. And Mark, I just did not think fast enough on my feet, but I've been thinking about that comment that she made. So I didn't say anything to her now at that point, but I do now know how to respond to that, because Paganicon is absolutely not a safe place to be. When you have a body of people, believers, and it's a closed system where all they're hearing is paganism, paganism, paganism. There's no challenge to their worldview. There's no other perspective coming in. That's not safety. That's almost like cult-like status. If you want a safe place, you've got to have an event where you're inviting the Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, the Christians, the Catholics. to come in. And now let's have a dialogue. Now, Mr. Pagan, let me challenge you lovingly with this tidbit. You're going to say this about the Trinity. How about if I show you that this is correct about the Trinity? So you've got to have other ideas, competing ideas coming in to really have a safe place, a safe space. So Paganicon is not a safe place for pagans to go to. They're just going to keep hearing the wrong information that leads them on the wrong path.
Absolutely.
And for
Christy,
me,
Kat, sorry, if in the last sort of 30 seconds, go on, you say.
Go have a conversation with somebody. You don't have to be an expert. I think that's one thing that we as Christians put on ourselves, that we need to be an expert within that religion or something. No, you don't. You just need to start a conversation with somebody. You don't have to know every tool. You don't have to know all of that. Just talk to your neighbor. Go talk to just maybe somebody who's in a coffee shop, and just start asking questions, and also find out the truth for yourself too. If you're questioning if the Bible's what the validity of your Christian faith is, go research it. Go look into it. The evidence is out there, and you just got to find it because it's there.
Brilliant. I just want to thank you both for joining me in my evening, and thank you very much. And I'm just going to play us out. Stay with me over the other side, and I'll say a formal goodbye. But thank you very much. And please, everybody who've been very kindly listening to this, understand why it's undercover, why it's just audio. But please remember Kat and Robbie in your prayers, and just thank you for joining me tonight. And I will speak to you very soon. Not at all. Bobby, thank you. Kat, thank you. Robbie,
Thank you.
But thank you very much indeed. Cheers.